Odin gave me a beautiful gift before he was murdered. And that was introduced me to his girlfriend, Shania. Odin was my first best gift I ever received.
The mother of the man murdered by Aaron Hernandez. So let us begin the midweek discourse. First up, co-host of the McGraw Show, heard every weekday morning on the Big 550, KTRS in St. Louis, Missouri from 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time, McGraw Milhaven. And she is a licensed attorney in the states of New York and New Jersey, adjunct professor in several areas of the law, and a co-founder of Lawyer Up, an educational firm for law students. Welcome back, Elura Nanos. I thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks.
You betcha. Happy to be here.
Thank
All
you.
right, Elura, seeing as you are the attorney, we got to start right with you. Aaron Hernandez found guilty of first-degree murder. 135 witnesses called, 132 by the prosecution. No gun, but it seems as if they made their case. Do you think they did?
I think they did. I don't think this was a surprise to anyone. Basically, Aaron Hernandez's defense was completely not credible. His story about not being anywhere near there until afterward, it just is not believable. I think this verdict is absolutely correct, and I think it's just not a surprise to anyone.
McGraw, I know you're a big sports fan, of course, being in St. Louis, and I see you wearing a Seattle Seahawks jacket, so it shows me right away that you're a football fan. Think about this. You had a guy with a $40 million contract. He was a great athlete coming out of the University of Florida, had the world by the tail here, and he gets involved in something like this. There are some people who would tell you that this is not really as odd as you would think. There are a lot of ball players who have separate lives that people would find very questionable.
Well, the thing about Aaron Hernandez was that coming out of college, he had a reputation of somewhat of a bad boy, and many teams stayed away from him, and the Patriots decided to sort of take a chance on him, and he was successful and a very good football player for a number of years, but then his demons sort of reared its ugly head. And I don't want to take anything away from the tragedy of this, but this is another football player who, with all this talk about head injuries, maybe, just maybe, he was injured, and maybe, just maybe, his concussions and his hits on his head might have led to some of these mental things that might have happened down the road.
Well, again, that's really, and I understand what you're saying, that's really going far to think of what may happen down the road, because I mean, it would seem as if a lot of this was very well planned out. They have ruled he is now going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Oddly enough, the prison that he will stay in for the rest of his life, both of you, is about a mile or so away as the crow flies from Gillette Stadium, where the Patriots play. So think about that. Not far away at all. Okay, here we go. Next up, Cuba is off the terror list. McGraw, a lot of people I know in South Florida, younger people, they will say, it's time, get rid of it. The older community says, absolutely not. These are communists and terrorists. It's the wrong thing to do. What do you think?
Well, we negotiate, we trade with terrorists. We trade with communist countries all around the world. China, the former Soviet Union, now Russia. We go to the ends of the earth to trade with these countries because we believe that if you trade with a country, they will not bomb you, they will not go after you. There is absolutely no reason why we have had this Cuba policy for 50 years. Well, really, the only reason is that Florida is a very important state when it comes to presidential politics. The reason why President Obama waited till the last 2 years of his presidency is because it is very politically motivated, or it is very politically explosive. But when you get right down to it, if you take all of the emotion out of it, there is no reason why the people of Cuba should be left alone and not traded with. It just makes absolutely no sense, and this is the right move for America.
Elura, I got about a minute left here to you on this one. That's what many people say. Look, we deal with China, we deal with Vietnam, we deal with a lot of other countries that have horrible human rights and civil rights violations against their own people. Why shouldn't we be doing it with Cuba?
Yeah, I have to say that on this, I really do agree with McGraw. There's really no reason for this ban. When it was put into effect, things were very different. I think most Americans are happy that Cuba is going to be open for trade. And I do think that trading with foreign countries, even when they have governments that we disagree with, even when they have policies that we disagree with, can be a good thing. I don't think that means that we let our guard down completely, but I do think that it's a step in the right direction.
All right, now wait a minute. Say that last part again very briefly, because I know people want to hear that. Don't let your guard down, because isn't it fair to say that you take them off the terror list, you've still got to make sure that they abide by whatever rules and regulations you set. There's no reason to believe that you can trust them at this point.
I think that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I don't think trading with a country implies that we agree with everything they do, or that we agree with everything that their government has to offer, or everything that their government is doing. I think that we still have to watch Cuba. I think we still have to watch many countries that we do business with. I just think that the extreme measure of putting them on this list and having them just be a country that we can't deal with on any level is too extreme for the situation. So I mean, I do think we have to watch Cuba and we have to be careful, but we're careful and cautious with many countries with which we do business.
There you go. All right, we're up against a break. McGraw, Milhaven, Elura, Nanos, please stand by just a couple of moments, because when we come back, we'll look at another government, the Iranian government that we're looking to do business with, and what happens, and what do you think about the time that a cop rams a suspect instead of shooting him? Next on The Arena.
Unit right there, just stand off, the gun is loaded. Unit on Latero Park, stay off.
Let's get back to work in The Arena. Co-host of the McGraw Show every weekday morning, the Big 550, KTRS St. Louis, Missouri, 6 to 10 a.m. Central, McGraw Milhaven, and licensed attorney, New York, New Jersey, co-founder of Lawyer Up, Elura Nanos joins us. Elura, I'm going to wait for you on this one for just a moment here. I know the attorney will come right to us. McGraw, this to you first. We just saw the video of what happened in Marana, Arizona, where a guy with a rifle, whom they thought might be a problem, the cruiser, the cop takes his cruiser, rams into him. It's the dash camera on February the 19th. Some people say he shouldn't have done this. This was excessive. Other people are saying, wait a minute, if you don't do this, then you might have a shootout in a public street. Did he get it right?
I really, in that moment, in that instance, I have a really hard time second-guessing any police officer what they're doing. We have the hindsight of sitting in our nice air-conditioned studios and sort of commenting and questioning what they should or shouldn't do. But when you're out on the front lines, and this is very important, especially here sitting in St. Louis after going through what we did with Ferguson. Imagine this police officer ramming his car to stop somebody. That is extraordinary. This officer should be given a medal, given a citation, and the rest of us should just sit back and thank them for doing their jobs every single day.
And Elura, we have to point out that he was a suspect in a multi-incident crime spree. We just saw a piece of video. He had taken the rifle that he had stolen from a store, a Walmart, had the rifle to his throat. He had previously led a home invasion, robbed a convenience store, fired a shot at cops with the stolen weapon. I mean, honestly, when you put all this together, and again, it's a matter of putting all the pieces of the story together here. It wasn't just a cop going half cocked off and hitting a guy with his car. There's a reason for it.
That's absolutely right. Now, I do not subscribe to the philosophy that just because police are on the front lines of crime, that every decision that they make, because it has to be made in a split second, is automatically correct. However, in this situation, this is not an excessive force case. This is a situation of a very typical psychopath in the middle of committing crimes, hot pursuit, when truthfully he should be thanking the police because they probably saved his life by hitting him with the car.
Now, wait a minute. Make that point, if you will, for just a moment, Elura, because a lot of people are saying that right now, and I want you as an attorney to specifically state why they may have saved his life so people understand.
I think that from a causation perspective, there is a very good possibility that this incident of being hit with the car saved his life. And the reason why I say that is because had he not been hit with the car, there is a very good chance that the situation would have escalated into a shootout. And had there been a shootout, he very likely would have been killed. So given these facts, I mean, I don't think that the officer who hit him did it for that reason, but I think that the way the circumstances came about, he actually lucked out by being just hit with a car because he ended up being all right. And when we're talking about a violent criminal in the middle of a crime spree, I mean, at that point, all bets are off. At that point, there is no force that's excessive. Deadly force is completely warranted here.
McGraw, I think that's what, and Elura just said something, a crime spree. When you take what I have just stated here, which does not get put into a lot of the reports, you have to sit and actually read and hear about it, then there's a reason behind this. Look, cops right now, I think just like everybody else, are a little gun shy, and rightly so for a lot of the things that have been happening around the country right now. They're still looking to neutralize a threat. If this is the best way to do it and you don't get anybody killed, I think everybody should be thrilled with this.
I do too, but there's a bigger issue here, and that is us nitpicking or putting ourselves in the police officer's shoes at a moment's notice, in an instant. They have an instant to react, and in that instant, if they hesitate, they could be dead or somebody else could be injured. And so we, as a society, look at these police and say, boy, you know what? You didn't do it exactly right at exactly the right time. Change the story. Let's say the guy was a drunk driver going the wrong way on the street, and all of a sudden the police officer decided the best mode of action was to ram the car, and all of a sudden the guy's injured. Now the police officer shouldn't have done it. He should have done it. We're all Monday morning quarterbacks. Walk 1 mile, walk one step in these police officers' shoes, and then tell them how to do it.
Fair to say, though, and Elura, I'll bet you would agree on this as well, that when we're looking at the case in Tulsa, Oklahoma, though, where they basically have a sheriff who sells a badge and a gun to a 73-year-old guy who'd spent 1 year on a professional police force before, who accidentally shoots somebody. I mean, there is a reason why we have to back up and question certain things that happen.
There's always going to be a reason to question police behavior. And the fact that police are there making very difficult decisions with very little time to make the decisions is why it's important that they're trained properly and supervised properly. It's not a carte blanche for police to do whatever they want, but there's always going to be a tension between second guessing what police in tough circumstances did and making sure that there's not an excessive use of force. It's always going to be difficult. There's always going to be Monday morning quarterbacking, but at the basic result is that we're going to have good training and good rules and clear rules for police to follow.
Don't ask McGraw about Monday morning quarterbacking. He's a Seahawks fan. He's still thinking about the Super Bowl, okay? I don't want to go there. Please stand by, both of you. We've got one more break. Come back. McGraw, Milhaven, Elura, Nanos. When we do come back, hey, how would you like to have a minimum wage of $70,000, even if you are just an administrative assistant answering phones? That and more. We'll talk about it on The Arena when we continue. One more time with this panel here in The Arena, co-host of The McGraw Show, Big 550 KTRS, St. Louis, Missouri, 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time, the Seattle Seahawks fan. He's got to explain that one, McGraw Milhaven, and licensed attorney in the states of New York and New Jersey, co-founder of Lawyer Up, Elura Nanos. Don't worry, McGraw, I'll give you a chance to get to that at the end here. We got a bunch of things to cover. Elura, let's start with you. A company in California, Gravity Payments, has decided that he makes so much money he's going to give everybody on his staff a minimum wage of $70,000. I would imagine that a lot of people listening to us right now want to sign up, but is this a good thing when you have a company like this offering somebody that kind of money? It gives a lot of people false hope, I think.
I don't know about that. I think that this is a terrific thing, and I think it's a brilliant move on the part of this CEO. You know, it's not a humongous company. I think it's a 70-employee company. And by raising wages for the employees, what he's done is gotten spectacular PR, better PR than he ever could have paid for. I've never heard of this company, and now I have, and now I'll think of it when I'm doing my payroll and my credit card processing. The company's got a great message. He's going to have great employee morale and loyalty, and aside of doing the right thing for people. So I think it's wonderful for everyone. And I think companies should take note and think about long-term goals for their companies that can be really achieved by doing the right thing by their employees.
By the way, it is based in Seattle, not in California. And McGraw, if you look at it, geez,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. That was my bad. $70,000, McGraw, that would be what? 7 people on starting salaries at radio stations across America. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But is it a good idea? I mean, it seems to for loyalty purposes, sure.
Well, I think it's a great PR move because I think she's right. No one's heard of Gravity Payments. And if you're thinking about starting or needing or switching to a credit card payment processing place, you might think of this place now. Great PR. But I think it's a terrible move because you've taken all the incentive away from your employees.
There you go. Incentive. My goodness, I didn't think we had that in America anymore.
There's a very good employer who's working extra, working Saturday nights and Sunday and being called in on holidays to make sure the system is up and running. There's another person who's taken 2-hour breaks, taking smoke breaks every 15 minutes, and sort of not a very good employee. You now both paying them $70,000? What's the incentive to work harder if everyone's going to make the same?
All right. I will have to go. Go ahead, Elura.
I was going to say, I mean, if the person's not doing their job well, they can always get fired. The incentive is to keep a good job with an employer who respects and values you.
There you go. Okay, we'll leave that. Let's move on to the next one here. This is interesting. I think this kind of shows a little bit how too much we, not just in America, but around the world, we get too tied into television shows. You have probably both heard, as everybody have, of the show Top Gear, the BBC show, wildly famous. Jeremy Clarkson, one of their hosts, gets fired. There was a rumor that started that a woman who was a presenter on the Great British Bake Off was going to be the next host. And it was totally absurd. It was out on Twitter. She got death threats from people basically saying, how dare you? And they said they want to see me burned to death. Hey, McGraw, come on. I mean, you and I have seen this in the media a lot, but this just shows that people got to back off a little bit and maybe get a life somewhere.
There's no question, and there's great things for social media. But you know what? We are learning that there are a few people who should not have social media, and there are some people who should just stay in their parents' basement and not have any access to any social media platform.
All right, now, Elura, from the legal side of things, if you're sending out death threats on Twitter to social media or any form of social media to someone, let's take it just here in America. Could you be held liable for that, an arrestable offense?
I mean, you certainly could. It depends on what state and how it's done and what the laws say in that state. I mean, it certainly could be considered a threat. Typically, words alone are not enough to really get you criminally liable for threats. But I mean, in conjunction with other actions, or it could certainly be harassment if it's repeated. So I mean, I think that there's definitely a risk to doing that.
All right, now here's another one for you, and this comes to a legal sense because we just talked about harassment and we talked about intent and such things. At Coachella, the big music festival, very eclectic music festival this past week, there was a guy walking around with a shirt. We're going to show it. I want to warn everybody, first of all, that you may find this a little bit insensitive, but this is the picture going around. Eat, sleep, rape, repeat. Yeah, a little, exactly. He's walking around, he's smiling while he's showing this off. Elura, from a legal standpoint, again, I'm probably overthinking this because I'm not a lawyer, I just play one on TV, but that almost sounds like people could take that as a threat.
Well, I mean, I don't really know that someone would take that as a threat reasonably. Clearly, it's in horrible taste. Clearly, it's completely offensive. But I think that it probably is protected by the First Amendment because given the context that it's a T-shirt being worn at a music festival and not, for example, something being worn in a courthouse, you know, all of those factors are taken into consideration, and most likely this would be considered protected speech. I think that there are surrounding circumstances that could make this rise to the level of unprotected speech, you know, depending on where he wore it and whether he said the words or how he was acting in conjunction with those words.
He was smiling when he said it. I got to tell you, just looking at the picture of that, you see a guy who's basically proud to be showing off that shirt. I mean, McGraw, that just says something about society in general. You're smiling when you put that on. There's no joke in there. That's the least thing you want to joke about. Yet he seemed to be rather happy, and he's getting his 15 minutes of fame.
Ed, there's a lot of talk in this country about rights. What rights do I have, and what can I do? But there's very little talk about responsibility. And just because you can wear a shirt like that, and the government's not going to arrest you, is it really smart? Is it really responsible? Is it moral? Is it ethical? Is that the image you want to portray to the world? And we should talk more about responsibility sometimes and not just rights.
And you use the word smart. As I have told people many times, you wear a shirt like that, somebody puts your name to it, all of a sudden, guess what? You're applying for that big job in 5 years, and somebody says, hey, wasn't this you at Coachella, by the way? See if you get that job very quickly. 60 seconds left to the two of you. Here comes our last shot. McGraw, you get this first. Should pets be given medical marijuana treats? They're now coming out with them that have cannabis in them, and they claim that it will help the puppies and it will help make them better. Why not?
Yes, not only should pets and animals and dogs and cats, but you know what? Even humans. Humans are animals too. Humans should be allowed, if a doctor prescribes it, get the government out of my doctor's office. Let the humans chew and smoke medical marijuana and or recreational marijuana for that matter.
Your turn, Elura.
I mean, I think that in this case, it's very notable that the levels of THC in the cannabis that's going in these doggy treats is very low. So it actually doesn't even have the high producing effect that we're talking about. And I believe that's the case in most medical marijuana use also. So when we're talking about a situation that has only benefit and no burden, I say go for it.
I'm a dog lover, and if anybody told me that I had to give it to my puppies, I'd go out and buy it in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even think about it twice. There you go. Elura, Nanos, and McGraw, Milhaven. McGraw, we got through the whole segment. We didn't ask about the Seahawks jacket and make you embarrassed because you live right around the Rams. We'll do that another time. I thank you both for joining us. Take care. We'll talk to you again.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
All right. See you both soon. Coming up next, the second half of the arena. The teachers that got 7 years in prison. What did they do? Well, they basically just changed some grades. But it's a lot worse than that. And a lot more than that. Coming up right here, second half of the arena.